Imagine this. You finally hit your first $100,000, and instead of feeling rich, you feel exhausted. Because getting there took years. Years of saving, years of saying no to things, years of watching everybody else flex online while you're debating whether buying takeout twice in 1 week is financially irresponsible. And then somebody says, your first 100,000 is the hardest. After that, money starts growing itself. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, but when? Because from where you're standing, it still feels painfully slow. Look, if you've ever felt like investing takes too long, if you've ever wondered whether compounding is actually real or just another finance cliché, this video is going to completely change the way you think about money. Because here's what most people don't realize. The insane part of compounding doesn't happen at the beginning. It happens later, much later, and by the time most people finally understand it, they've already wasted the most important ingredient in investing, time. My name is Leonard, and I spend way too much time thinking about the how fast $1 million grows after year 10, the compounding effect. If you're someone who feels like investing is painfully slow, struggles to stay consistent with saving money, or constantly feels behind financially, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Now here's the thing. Most people think becoming wealthy is about making more money. And yes, income matters. But the bigger problem is expectations. People think wealth grows in a straight line. You invest money, your portfolio slowly grows. Nice and predictable. But real compounding doesn't work like that. It works like a snowball rolling downhill. At first, barely anything happens. Then suddenly, everything happens at once. And this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine two people. Person A starts investing at 25. Person B starts at 35. Both invest $500 per month into a basic index fund, averaging around 10% annually, roughly what the S&P 500 has historically averaged over long periods before inflation. After 10 years, Person A has invested about $60,000. Their portfolio is worth roughly $103,000. Good progress, but honestly, still not life-changing. And this is the phase where most people quit. Because psychologically, the reward doesn't feel worth the sacrifice. You skipped vacations, you stayed disciplined, you invested consistently, and after a decade, you have just over $100,000. Meanwhile, social media is showing fake millionaires renting luxury cars, pretending they became rich overnight. So people lose patience, and this is one of the biggest financial mistakes in modern society. People abandon compounding right before compounding becomes powerful, because if Person A keeps going, at year 20, their portfolio isn't worth $200,000. It's worth closer to $379,000. By year 30, roughly $1.1 million. But here's the crazy part. At 10% annual growth, a $1 million portfolio can potentially grow by around $100,000 in a strong year without you adding a single dollar. That means your investments could generate more money than many full-time salaries. While you sleep, while you're working, while you're doing absolutely nothing. And that's the real shift. Wealthy people eventually stop trading time for money. Their money starts working harder than they do. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Leonard, but getting to $1 million still sounds impossible. And honestly, that's why most people never do it. Not because it's mathematically impossible, but because humans are terrible at understanding exponential growth. There's actually something called exponential growth bias. Researchers have found that people naturally underestimate compounding because our brains prefer linear thinking. We expect steady progress, but compounding is uneven by nature. Tiny gains early, massive gains later. Imagine planting a tree. For years it barely changes. Then eventually the roots become deep enough that growth accelerates dramatically. Investing works exactly the same way. The roots matter first. The visible growth comes later. Here's another example. A $100,000 portfolio growing at 10% annually might generate around $10,000 per year. helpful, but not life-changing. Now jump to $500,000. At the same return, that portfolio could generate roughly $50,000 annually. That's an entire salary, and at $1 million, potentially $100,000 annually. See how the game changes? The first phase is powered mostly by your effort. The second phase is powered increasingly by your assets. And this creates a huge emotional problem, because the beginning feels unfair. You work incredibly hard for results that feel small. But later, the system rewards patience disproportionately, which is why discipline matters more than motivation. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you invested long enough for compounding to actually matter. Look, one of the most dangerous financial beliefs people have is this idea that they need some massive breakthrough to become wealthy. A viral business, crypto luck, a huge salary. But statistically, boring consistency beats dramatic intensity most of the time, and yet people still make the same mistakes over and over again. They panic during crashes, they chase trends during bubbles, they stop investing during recessions, which ironically is often when future returns become strongest. Here's what most people don't realize. Compounding only works if you stay invested. The market rewards endurance more than intelligence. That's why average investors often underperform the very funds they invest in. Not because the investments are bad, because their behavior is bad. They buy emotionally, sell emotionally, and sabotage their own returns. So let's talk about the psychology behind this. Humans are wired for immediate rewards. Your brain loves instant gratification. Food, entertainment, shopping, dopamine now. Compounding is the opposite. You sacrifice today for a future version of yourself you can't clearly imagine yet. And honestly, that's hard, especially when society constantly pressures people to look rich instead of become rich. People finance cars they can't afford, upgrade phones every year, spend money trying to impress people they secretly don't even like, all while saying investing is too risky. Meanwhile, inflation quietly destroys their purchasing power every year. And this is where financial maturity really begins. When you stop asking, "What can I buy right now?" and start asking, "What can this money become if I leave it alone?" That question changes everything, because every unnecessary purchase has a hidden future cost. A $200 impulse purchase today isn't just $200. Invested over decades, it could become thousands. Now, before people misunderstand this video, let me be clear. Compounding is not magic. There will be crashes, recessions, years where your portfolio drops 20% or more. That's normal. But long-term investors see crashes differently. Average people see a crash and think, "I'm losing money." Experienced investors think, "Assets are temporarily cheaper." Same event, completely different mindset. And that mindset matters enormously, because some of the greatest fortunes in history were built during periods of fear, not optimism. This is why automation is so powerful. Automatic investing removes emotion from the process. You invest consistently whether markets feel exciting or terrifying. And honestly, that's one of the smartest things an average person can do. So if you're watching this thinking, "Okay, what should I actually do?" Here are the practical steps. First, focus on consistency more than perfection. Second, automate your investments. Third, stop obsessing over daily market movements. Most financial news exists to capture attention, not build wealth. Fourth, increase income where possible, but avoid upgrading your lifestyle every time your income rises. And finally, protect your time horizon, because time is the entire engine behind compounding. The longer you stay invested, the more aggressive the growth becomes. Remember, the biggest gains usually happen in the later years, not the beginning. Which brings us back to the title of this video. How fast does $1 million grow after year 10? Potentially very fast. Fast enough that eventually your investments may begin generating more income than your actual job, but only if you survive the early years. The boring years. The invisible years. The years where discipline matters more than visible results. Because wealth is usually built quietly long before it becomes visible. And honestly, that's probably the most important financial lesson people can learn. 10 years from now is going to happen whether you invest or not. The question is, will your money still only work as hard as you do? Or will you finally have assets working for you too? If this video helped you think differently about money, hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to investing consistently? And remember, the first years of compounding feel slow. But the people who stay patient long enough eventually reach a point where money starts moving differently. That's when financial freedom stops being a fantasy and starts becoming math.